Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when we can get owner, operator, entrepreneur extraordinaire Kristine Wyatt on the line. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, Matt. Good to be here.
So I'm really excited because we have, well, I want to say a mutual friend, but I don't think you refer to your husband as your friend. So it's probably not the best way to do it. But her husband, we actually went to college together and we lived together for a couple years. And not too long ago, we were kind of doing some stuff together. And that's how I won't say that's how I got to know you, but that's definitely how I got to hear about you. And so I'm curious to get your background. I'm curious to fill in the gaps that your husband is kind of put out there for us. But I do want to make sure that I have this right. So as far as I can tell, and I might be missing something, and I understand that some of these might be owned by you, or I know that you guys have family businesses. But as far as I know, you have a couple businesses. So you have DK Property Management.
Yes.
You have Live Beautifully Real Estate Group.
Yep.
You're doing Airbnb with Cabin des Seawares, or Jesus Christ, I know your husband's name. Cabin, is that right? You're doing
Cabin des Seawares, yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then you guys also have map training out in Roseville. Am I missing anything?
Yes. And now Greg has Maptrition, which is a supplement line.
Okay. So you guys have a lot going on. You guys are definitely a busy family. And yes. I remember having a conversation with Greg not too long ago, well, a while ago, but he was telling me about how you kind of got into the industry and how you could essentially price out any remodel on a house, down to the cent, how much a nail is going to cost and how much the price. And I was like, that seems like a very useful skill, obviously, in the real estate game. Is that how you got into real estate?
So a lot of people don't know this, but I actually went to school for interior design.
Okay.
And then I learned how to do drafting using AutoCAD. So I actually, my first few jobs after graduating college were interior design, but it was mostly doing drafting for like floor plans. And then later on, I ended up working for a general contractor developer, drawing all of their plans. And they also worked, they also had a mortgage and real estate company. So they did basically everything. And that's where I learned, a lot. That was back in 2004. And they actually wanted me to get my real estate license so I could help them on the real estate part, not just the construction design part of their business.
Well, that's such a unique way to enter into the market. And you've been in real estate, I guess, some facet of real estate for a long time now, right? I mean, 2004, you went through most of the people that, I've had on here, minus like a broker here and there. They haven't been realtors that long. They didn't go through when that big shift was happening. And now you're here in this other shift. So I think that probably gives you pretty great perspective. But, being able to go into the market like that through the interior design and then through the development, what kind of eye does that give you for real estate?
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't have the eye to see past a lot of people's furniture or bad choices that they make as far as like the DIY, because a lot of people were doing that in the early 2000s. So you would see a lot of homes where the flooring and cabinets didn't go together, or people chose really ugly light fixtures. Sure. And it's like, hey, that's not that hard to fix. And it's probably, you can just get a $200 light fixture at Home Depot and paint this room and it'll look just like amazing. So just having that insight on what things cost, but also knowing like, hey, check out this photo of this, room or these colors, like this will look amazing after you're done, and it doesn't cost that much.
What is your kind of, and I think this is just kind of interesting in general, but we were having a conversation at our brokers not too long ago about how VR is now, being able to scan stuff into an empty room, but they're also developed a system where you can scan the room and take stuff out of it. And so that sort of idea of being able to like move stuff around, virtually design it, Does that appeal to you? And is that fine for just like photos and stuff like that? Or do you think that a house needs to be staged?
Um, I think right now everybody's looking online before they'll even step into a house. And so if the photos aren't there, with the virtual staging or even professional staging,
Mm,
then your home's going to be overlooked. So I definitely think if you can't afford staging, like actual staging, then virtual staging is definitely a must have in today's market. But it does, I feel like when you go into a house and you do see a home staged, like you feel that,
mm.
it's a feeling when you walk into the door, like I could live here. This is my lifestyle versus just seeing it as photos. So I do think it has a bigger impact when you do go see a home to have it physically staged for that reason, because it's more of a feeling that people get when they walk into the room.
Right. And no, I think it's cool that you're able to I would say that I have like somewhat of an eye. Like I like, clean lines, and I know that, stuff should be kept clean and that we should keep the room bright. But I wouldn't say by any means that I have like great styling or anything like that. And so it would be I always thought, in Sacramento, I don't necessarily feel like the market's at least, kind of the where I'm at, that a lot of prep, like having to fully stage a property, when you're in bigger areas like in the Bay Area, LA, San Diego, places like that where the price points are so much higher. I fully understand like bringing on a service like that. But, for somewhere that's a little bit smaller, and we're not that far away from each other, I just try to make sure that houses look nice, or if they're going to be vacant, clean, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's critical.
Well, and a vacant house definitely shows more flaws too.
Mm,
I mean, you'll see everything like scuff marks on the baseboard, just little things. If there's an imperfection in the drywall, so that's another reason why staging really helps sell a home. I mean, our previous home that I lived in for 10 years, we had it as a rental for about a year and a half
mm-hmm,
after we moved to another home in Lincoln. And once they moved, I had, you know, the house painted, new carpet. I had it staged also.
mm-hmm,
And we ended up getting $50,000 more than like the highest market value, and that was
mm-hmm.
because the staging, and it sold a lot faster too. I mean, we had multiple offers in 3 days. But yeah, that was last year's market, but still, that home probably sold like 75,000 over the highest comp, and I think part of it was the staging and prepping it for the market.
Sure, and there's certainly a benefit for having your skill set, right? It would be interesting, I think, to have the same house and then you and I both have to stage them against each other. I
I
feel
think
extremely
HGTV has
confident
that
you would.
show already.
Yeah, you would probably win. I'd feel pretty confident about that. So that's funny. So then you went from, I mean, you were doing that, and then you got into this essentially construction company, right?
Yeah, so I was drafting for them, which ended up into a project management
Mm,
position. So I was actually hiring and doing all the contracts for all the subcontractors that we hired, and then also that business, they ended up starting their own building supply company so that they could purchase building materials wholesale.
mm.
So I was ordering truckloads of drywall and lumber and all this stuff. And it's like, I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned so much from it when I first started, I was just like, okay, sure, I'll do it. But I learned so much just learning the different types of drywall, 3/4 inch or half inch, different, you know, different building materials that are needed in quantities, and then also just meeting with the different contractors and going over their scope of work and actually seeing homes. And actually, a big project I did was I think it was like over 300 unit condo
Mm.
development, and just seeing the steps that went by to actually put a house together. That that was the best learning experience I could get as far as, what it takes for a home to be built, because a lot of people don't know what's inside of a wall
Right. Well,
behind the
that's
drywall.
the kind of like I think I've had a couple people on that are, they've tried to get into investing or wholesaling or things like that. And I don't want to jump too far into that, but I do know that I don't know the extent of what you guys do per se, but I know you've been doing some remodeling on properties that you have and things like that. And even someone like myself, who I've had some experience in that, it's such a unique insight to be able to have been on that side of the business, because there's very few real estate agencies that have a mortgage company attached to them, and then that's even rare to have a construction company attached to them. And so you kind of had like a lot of cross training really young in your career, it sounds like, and it's intimidating. I have to say that I worry sometimes. Like I like to think that I'm very competitive, very professional, and things like that. But then I see someone like you in the market, and I think, man, I feel like I'm behind. I just feel like there's so much more that I can learn, and that, I'm sure that if we had to come up against each other, it would be amicable. But ultimately, it just feels like you have such a strong knowledge base on this. How have you been? I know you have these properties that you guys have. How's learning that information, especially like price points and things like that, helped you with being effective in remodeling your properties?
I mean, one of the first big projects that we did was Sonoma, and every project's a learning curve, because you never know getting into it, like what your battles are going to be. And part of that one was actually like the closest Home Depot was about 40 minutes away, which is very time consuming. So if you don't get the right things, which often when you're remodeling a home, especially an older home, things don't fit properly, even though you measure them several times, or something breaks or whatever. But that home, that took a while to do, just because also we live like an hour and a half to 2 hours away, depending on traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we got the whole place. So we didn't really have anywhere to stay in the house. So that was something that we learned from, like, hey, next time, let's do this first so that it's easier to do the remodel instead of like going gung ho and doing everything at once and all the demo. And also refinishing old like floors from the 1930s is, we probably shouldn't have done it ourselves. Like,
Mm-hmm.
pay a professional to do that. You know what I mean? Like, some of those things, like, I've learned, like, hey, it's worth paying the extra money for a professional to do it. Like, especially painting, because they have the proper material, they know how to mask it. It takes 2 days, where if Greg and I did it, it's like 2 weeks, and
Right.
I don't even like the way it turned out.
And you guys are so busy as well, right? I mean,
True.
just in your general everyday lives, you guys have a young child, you guys have multiple businesses, and you have
Yeah.
to find time to spend time together and do fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So doing a remodel while also, you know, catering to your real estate clients, showing them properties or selling homes, and then also doing property management too, because a lot of times it can be really quiet on the property management front, and then all of a sudden it'll be, my sink's broken,
Mm,
my roof's leaking, my fence blew over, all in one week, so that you're having to focus on repairing somebody else's house, which
sure.
gives you a lot more knowledge too about repairing things. And fortunately too, I've created, from these businesses, really great relationships with vendors and
Mm.
contractors. So I have that also, to use as well.
Yeah. How many rentals do you guys have?
So it's 50 doors currently.
50 doors. So do you
Mm.
guys, I know you have some on Airbnb, and then what are the other ones? They're apartments or?
So I manage 50 units of other properties other
Sure.
people own, like other clients own. And then um, we currently own one, two, three, four. So we have four rentals that are like full-time rentals, and then just the one Airbnb in Tahoe right now.
Got it.
I'm currently looking for a beach rental. I have I've been making offers on properties this
Mm.
last week, so I'm actually waiting to hear back on one in the next day or two. It'll actually expire tomorrow.
Oh, fingers crossed on that. Where are
Yeah.
you guys looking?
San Luis Obispo County, they're a little less strict with their short-term rental
Mm.
regulations.
Yeah, no, I
And that's
like
like
that. I
another
like that
thing.
area a lot. I have a couple friends who they really want to get a rental, and I was like, if you guys want to buy at the beach, that's no cheap price. I'm like, we're gonna have to get
No.
like 10 people in here. They're all gonna have to put like 300 grand down. It's they're
Right.
expensive if you want to get nice ones that are close to the beach and things like that. I like Santa Barbara is like my wife and
Oh
I our
yeah.
favorite spot. We'd love to buy out there. Um, but yeah, so you were at the construction company and you were doing all of that, and then they essentially were like, "Hey, I think you should get your license for real estate." And you were happy about that? You were excited, or you were like, "Well,
Um,
it's just the next thing to do."
I mean, it just seemed like you know, I the thing is like I'll never say no to an opportunity, and I think that's where it's kind of got me to where I am now.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, sure, because they were going to pay for it, and I could study at work. So I mean, why not?
That's not bad.
It
That's
was
that's
like
a great
it was a
deal.
win-win for
Yeah,
me, really.
yeah, that's a pretty great deal. So let me ask
Yeah.
you, as a little kid growing up, was this your dream? Is this what you wanted? You wanted to do interior
I
design?
loved, see, when I was a kid, I loved houses. My
Hmm.
grandma and I would go to these abandoned houses and break in essentially and,
Okay.
think of the story of like who lived here. But
Hmm.
I would always go to other people's houses and I loved to look at their house. Like houses were always something that I loved, and I loved rearranging my parents' house and my grandparents' house. I'd actually get in trouble for doing that.
Mm.
They'd be like, Kristine, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. As I'm vacuuming up a spilled plant that I was moving from one side of the room to the other.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I think it's very rare for somebody to kind of grow up and then actually fall into their passion, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I never was like, oh, I want to be a real estate
Sure.
agent, but yeah, I mean, I've always loved homes, so
Yeah, I think
it
if
just,
there's some component, right? Like for me, I love coaching. That's always been my favorite part of everything I've done in life. And so, like, I never thought necessarily like I want to be a realtor or I want to do home loans or whatever it was. But I do like the idea of being able to help people get better at what they're doing. And so
yeah.
for me, that's been like a really great part of this industry. And then obviously, real estate and home loans is not a bad gig either. So I enjoy that. And I get to do a podcast in the middle of the day. So it's not too
Yeah.
bad. So you got your license, and did you also get your LO license at some point?
No,
No, just
mm-mm,
your real
never.
estate license. So how long were you there before you decided that you were going to open your own brokerage?
So I actually never used my real estate license when I worked for the construction company.
Mm.
I didn't start using it until 2009. And that's because, the whole mortgage crisis, the economic crisis happened. I actually got laid off.
Mm.
So I didn't really want to go back into construction project management. It's kind of a stressful job.
Hmm.
And I didn't really like being in front of a computer all day. So I was like, well, I need to put my real estate license somewhere. So you know, one of my friends from high school, he was posting on Facebook, and I really didn't know much about real estate.
Hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, now we're just hiring, da 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 da." And I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'll talk to him."
Sure.
So, I got the whole like sales pitch or whatever, and I'm like, sure, whatever, like I'll go there and try it out. And I thought when I first started, I thought to myself, oh, well, this will just be a part-time thing, I'll just see if I like it.
Hmm.
Well, I'm a very competitive person, and so getting into it, I just like dove right in, and I was doing open houses every weekend. When I first got in, everybody's like, this is a terrible market to get into. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this is great. Like there's so many vacant homes
Hmm.
that people want to see. The internet searching and requesting a Redfin agent or Zillow agent or whatever wasn't really a thing at that time.
Hmm.
People were coming to open houses, and I was doing open houses every weekend, and I would do it always at the same area, the same like little community. And I started in here in Lincoln where I live now. and I knew every house that was for sale. And I was never trying to sell that house I was doing the open house because it wasn't my listing.
Right.
It was just a bank-owned property. I would actually be like, "Hey, I think this house is better for you. Do you want to go take a look?"
Mm-hmm.
And we would go down the street and look at another, vacant house here or there. And that's how I ended up creating rapport with people at these open houses and started my client base.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of people who, there's people that are so afraid of a down market, right? And you hear that narrative a lot in the real estate space, like it's a bad time to be in real estate. I mean, I don't know if there's ever like a great time to be in real estate because people always have something negative to say. To be truthful, right? I mean, the rates are too
Yeah.
high, or houses are too high, or whatever, but every like super successful person I've talked to that's in real estate, they're excited about the market. They're like waiting. They're like, and even when, obviously outside of the obvious tragedies that happen because of the mortgage meltdown and all of that stuff, it's a great opportunity. And during that time, I know a lot of people that did a lot of short sales, a lot of people that were buying investment property, and people are like, well, people aren't buying or whatever it is. And I'm like, I know people that bought like 30 to 50 properties during that time. I mean, they were out there. It's just a matter if you're willing to put your feet to the ground, if you're willing to be out there and be personable. And that sounds like exactly what you were doing.
Yeah, it was actually, I felt like it was easier then because you were dealing with banks on the sell side. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't this emotional thing where, oh, I need a rent back. I need this. It was all about this is what I want for this is my asking price. If you're within that, you'll probably get the house.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't this like back and forth thing or overpriced. So it was a lot easier. And you didn't have to make all these appointments to show the properties. You just had to like figure out the best route to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you could see a dozen homes in a day in like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays it's like just to coordinate that with 12 different, sellers and stuff is like
Yeah, it
a,
can be a nightmare.
an all day
Yeah.
thing or all weekend.
So, just kind of looking back, with your experience that you have now, in especially because you buy properties and things like that, do you think that you would have been more aggressive in that market for your personal self? Like you might have picked up a property or two during that time?
I mean, I wasn't financially able to,
Mm,
but I wish I could have. So, um, because I had purchased two properties, one in 2006 and one in 2007.
mm-hmm.
And so that kind of put me in a bad spot
Sure.
financially. And then I was able to buy another property in 2011, which I got a great price on. And then bought a couple more investment properties that I've like bought and sold too since then, with my other properties I own as well.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, if I had the means, I definitely would have bought more properties.
So, while you were going through that time, you were essentially a full-time realtor.
I was also working at Banana Republic, and then I was
Nice.
also helping a friend who was doing event planning.
Mm-hmm.
So I would help with events too,
Okay.
mostly on the weekends, like mostly weddings.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun too. But yeah, so when I first started my first year, I did all three of those jobs. So I was really busy. And then
And what
after
sort of production were you doing in your first year?
so my first year, I think I sold like 5 or 6 homes.
That's not bad.
And I didn't, yeah, it's not bad at all. And then the second year was when I was like, I can't be working all these other jobs too. I
Mm-hmm.
think I did the like event planning stuff, but it was only, I don't know, like 4 or 5 weekends that I did it. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't much of a commitment. And then I totally like after that was like, I can't do all these
Mm-hmm.
things. And I was just full-time real estate. I think like the end of 2010.
Was that scary for you?
No.
You're ready. You're ready to go. I think it can be scary for a lot of people, when you have secure. It's like a security blanket, right? To have these extra jobs, and it you kind of feel like, well, it's distracting from ultimately what I think I could be making, what I could be doing, and the sort of impact I could be having. But also, what happens if I go 3, 4, 6 months without any work, getting any deals
Yeah.
in? I know it scares a lot of people. So it's definitely, I'm interested to, where were you at? Like, what made you say
I
I'm
would
ready to go?
I would say after my first year, um, my business was like super consistent. So I was probably closing at least a home a month. So
Mm,
it wasn't like I wasn't making any money. Like, so I think that's why I was like confident. And then also, um, I've always tried to like live below my means
mm,
too. So I didn't have a lot of bills that I had to pay. Um, the mortgage on my house was, I don't remember what it was, but I ended up getting a loan modification because I was in a bad loan from 2007.
mm.
And I think they modified it and it was like something ridiculous. It was like $300 a month.
Oh, wow.
So my overhead for my bills was not very high. So that's what also gave me the confidence and not like freak out by being self-employed, was because I had my life budgeted already
Right.
and
Yeah.
manageable.
That's, I think that's one of the harder things in real estate, especially as you get in older. Typically, your life, your ability to scale down becomes a little more difficult, right? And I've always
Yeah,
been like that as well. I've always tried to live well below my means, either by necessity or by pure force. But that's
yeah,
just life sometimes, right? And so it's definitely interesting, to I think have gone through that. And it's interesting to hear that you did have one of those bad loans and they made that adjustment for you.
mm,
But you were able to approach it. And I think that's when we talk to especially newer realtors or people that are interested in joining the real estate industry, I try to tell them like, hey, this can be a little bit tough and you might need some money reserves or you might need to be prepared to make those sort of adjustments in your life, have those conversations with your spouses and things like that. And to me, it sounds like, you had good people over you growing up that were kind of teaching the value of money and how to be prepared for those sort of things.
sure. Yeah, and it's all life experience too, even talking to clients in today's market, because I went through hard times also,
Hmm.
but luckily I was younger when I learned the mistakes. So I was like, 25, 26.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't learn until they're older, and it's a lot more difficult to get back on your feet when you are older. And it's more of, an ego thing too sometimes, but just going through like the loan modification and stuff like that too, because I was in a bad loan where I didn't really, I guess I didn't really understand like the whole rate adjustment thing either.
Sure.
And that's what happened to my loan. And that's why it was able to get modified.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a scary time for a lot of people. If you're not super familiar with that, we're not going to go too in depth with it, but these adjustable rate mortgages that were put out there, when those adjustment periods happen for some people through the country, their mortgage payments were doubling. It was a really scary time for people. And that's why so many people were losing their houses, going into foreclosure. And, it sounds like you worked through it at least. You know,
Yeah, I
uh,
actually still own that property. It's been a rental since 2011.
that's good. So, you were one of, I think, and I don't want to say the few, but probably one of the few that, it didn't affect your life as drastically as it could have.
Correct.
All right. So your superpower is you enter this market, you're getting deals done, right? You're getting your first year, you're like, I'm gonna go full in and you're doing really well. How does that progress for you over the next couple years?
So I actually because I was doing all these open houses and I was asking the listing agent who had these foreclosure, relationships with banks, like with Bank of America or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the agents, I would ask to do his open houses because he had quite a few listings in Lincoln. And then I would give him feedback, even
Mm-hmm.
though I don't think he really even cared. because he knows that the house is going to sell itself.
Sure.
But I think he liked that I was so, I had some drive and motivation to me. So he emails me and says, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to help me or partner with me to take over my Bank of America account.
Mm.
Would you be interested?" And I'm like, this sounds way too good to be true. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I actually met with his name's Steve. I met with Steve, and I had one of my friends come with me for coffee. And I mean, he'd been a broker for a long time. He had a big dream to move to Hawaii, so he needed somebody to co-list his listings with him
Mm.
um, while he was in Hawaii. And, I think he wanted to be a baker, is what his new passion was.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, yeah, for sure. So I ended up selling all of the homes that he had listed. I would co-list them with him, and then I would get all the buyer leads from them, and I would sell all these properties, and then I'd also have the buyer leads from them also, along with doing the open houses. So that was kind of what propelled my business. And then I just kept tracking things. I mean, I really didn't do anything, I feel like, extraordinary. I just had good relationship with people. Like, I knew the market. I was very educated. I'd educate my clients. And a lot of times I would tell people, I don't like this house, and I would tell them why. And I would
Mm-hmm.
talk them out of buying a house. And I think people like that because they know you have their back. And that's kind of how I've kept all of my clients all this year and had repeat business and referrals, is from that whole customer service aspect, where I think a lot of people lack because they're just looking for the next sale instead of actually creating relationships with people.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I almost want to say, like, have you ever ran into a leprechaun or got in, like, a lucky rabbit's foot somewhere in your life? But, it sounds just like you work hard, you're authentic with what you do, and you're out there, you're putting your face in the community. And I think that's one of the hardest things that I've found is there's a lot of people that hold their real estate license in California and through the country, but it is extremely difficult to find people that you can rely on that want to do this sort of work full time, or at least enough to where it can make an impact on your business to help grow it. And it sounds like that's what you were doing. You went full force, and by pure happenstance and luck and hard drive,
Yeah.
you partnered with this guy who wanted to do something else, and he's like, but I still got business. And that's pretty amazing. And that's a cool story.
Yeah, it was super lucky. But like I said, I'll never say no to an opportunity, or if somebody approaches me, it's like that seems so far-fetched at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
fortunately I wasn't intimidated or like blew the person off.
Sure. So during this time you're doing all of this, are you with a small brokerage, or what brokerage are you with?
So I was with Better Homes Realty, and I think I was the only agent that was really working in that office. I was really the only agent that was keeping that office open,
Mm,
which was a little like depressing to me because I didn't really have any peers.
right.
And I think because I was doing pretty well. I was, how brokers look up people's production.
Yeah.
So I had one broker who kept contacting me and like, "Hey, can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to lunch?" And I was like, "No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into that whole like schmooze thing or go to coffee stuff. It's like just get to the point." You know what I mean?
I don't have time for
And
this.
I'm too busy. And I
Yeah.
think that year I had sold like, I think, I don't remember what year it was, but I sold 36 homes that
Mm,
year with like no team, no nothing. I mean, I didn't really pay for marketing. It was
mm-hmm.
just, um,
Just hard work, really.
yeah, hard
Yeah.
work, really. I was grinding. And so finally I was like, okay, fine. Cause I was kind of over the brokerage that I was at because I was the only one there. Nobody was
Right.
ever there.
Better Homes, they have a magazine, right? And they're like their green and white logo, I think. I think there's one in Midtown.
So, so that better, Ho- it was Better Homes Realty, and
Mm.
they were affiliated with Avalar. And so it
Okay.
was like a red, white, and blue
Mm.
logo. I would say their whole philosophy was like the same as EXP,
Mm.
where it was more about recruiting. So, like the broker and the agent who had recruited me that I wasn't really like, I didn't really know about or
Mm-hmm.
care when I joined, they were always asking me, like, when are you closing your next deal? When are you closing your next deal? Because they were relying on me to make them money.
Yeah.
And that, like, really annoyed me. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, so Greg McClure, who owns a lot of
Cool name.
Realty One groups in our area,
Uh-huh.
he's the one that approached me and was like, come on, you know. So I was like, okay, fine. So he offers me this great, you know, deal at his company and just like an office in there for free, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what else. So I ended up switching to his company, but that was before he was Realty One Group.
Mm.
He was Smart Click. It was just like a little small brokerage,
Okay.
and I liked the agents that were in there. I've always been like a kind of like a small town girl, and
Mm.
I like that.
You're from
You
Lincoln
know,
originally?
I'm from Grass Valley
Oh,
originally.
so smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, smaller town. Yeah, smaller town.
Yeah.
It's still a small town. I don't think
Yeah.
it's ever grown. But I liked knowing all the agents that worked there and going to the office meetings. So when it became Realty One and it grew and grew and grew, I wasn't really liking that whole culture of um 500 agents that are under one brokerage, and
Mm.
I don't even know who the heck you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I've been thinking about this. You know, a lot of times I think we don't often talk about kind of how lonely it is to do a job like this. You spend most of your time by yourself outside of like talking to your clients, which isn't always super meaningful conversations. And so, it's interesting because it sounds like you essentially went from no team, no help, no support, outside of whatever maybe little they did for you, to then you went joined this team, then it grew to a larger capacity. It sounds like you got like both spheres. What was that like for you emotionally to have both of those? Where do you prefer to be?
I'm a loner. I
Okay.
actually like to be working at home, doing my own thing because um I felt like I was interrupted a lot being at the office,
Mm,
and it was more what could I teach you or what could I offer other people than what they could offer me.
sure.
Um I I I think for me going to like meetings about the market and what's going on in the community is a lot more beneficial. Like learning what developments are going on and
Hmm.
as far as like cities expanding and adding this new community that's going to be under construction.
Hmm.
Like I find that more interesting than sales strategies or door knocking strategies. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Well, I wonder if like you clearly have good business acumen, right? So I wonder for a lot of people like that are more similar to you who are they don't need anybody to motivate them. They can grind on their own. You're nice to people and they reflect to that, right? Where a lot of people really do need to be taught how to talk to people correctly, how to sell correctly, how to do the basic kind of components of what it is to be in real estate or sales or customer service. And so I could
Sure.
totally see how that would be like a waste of time. And I've ran into this before in some of the like clubs that I'm in, these social clubs or volunteer clubs in the communities where it's like, we're holding a training. And I'm like, yeah, I already did, leadership training in college and all of this stuff. Like, I don't really want to do stuff like that. Like, I just want to be out and, contribute essentially. Is that what you
Yeah,
were feeling like?
I don't need the rah stuff, you know, to motivate me. And I think a lot of people need to go in the office just to focus
Mm,
or to be like, this is where I'm working. But I've always been pretty good at scheduling my time and and having clear, like set expectations for myself, which is really hard for a lot of people to have,
Mm-hmm.
to be self-motivated and then also like tell yourself what to do and when to do it and actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have free time and you don't have somebody telling you that you have to do something by a certain time, um, I've seen a lot of agents where they decide to, instead of, making phone calls or doing their newsletter, they're at the beach, they're
Sure.
out on the lake, they're having fun, they're at happy hour. That wasn't me. I skipped. I would always be like, no, sorry, maybe next time. Thanks for inviting me. But I was
Mm-hmm.
always like focused on my work and what I needed to do first before the fun stuff.
What do you think, makes you like that?
I think inside I actually like I feel guilty if I don't succeed or if
Mm-hmm.
I don't do what I'm supposed to do.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally understand that, right? I mean, I grew up in foster care, and I grew up like it was not an easy road going up, right? So it's really tough. Like I talk to my wife all the time because she's from Europe, and Europe is
Mhm.
a whole different situation on leisure and travel and everything.
Yeah.
And I tell her all the time, like, look, like I got invited to Vegas, I got invited to Mexico, I got invited to spring break and all these places, and I chose to work. I worked, and that's been pretty much my MO forever. Now, maybe, if it was a different situation at some point, I might have taken more advantages of that. But ultimately, I'm happy with the way that I make these decisions. And I do find, that's part of the allure or benefit of being in a business like this where you run it yourself is you can take the day off and you can go to the beach and you can do that, but at what sacrifice, right? There's always some sort of give and take that's going to happen. And if you just want to be, a realtor that does some production and lives in, relatively okay life, I think that there's certainly a balance there, but you're not doing that clearly, right? You're doing a lot
Well,
more.
I actually have a good like something that sparked my memory. It was I used to walk around these two neighborhoods and hand deliver a newsletter.
Hmm.
And it would take about 2 hours. I would walk my dog, and I did that for probably 2 years. And it was this one 4th of July weekend where everybody was at the lake. But I needed to get this done because I always had like set time frames when I
Hmm.
wanted to get it done. And I knew if I didn't get it done like this particular day, then I wasn't going to be able to do it for like another week or whatever. Anyway, so I said I need to deliver my newsletter first before I can meet you guys at the lake for 4th of July. So I walked and did my 2 hour loop.
Hmm.
Well, lo and behold, while I was still walking, I set it on one doorstep where he was visiting his girlfriend from Seattle. He wanted to buy $1 million home and he wanted to find it that weekend. So he called me and was like, I called this other agent who's the listing. They're not available because it's a holiday weekend. Are
Hmm.
you available? I'm like, absolutely.
I'll be there.
So, so I said, I have plans today
Hmm.
because I already told other people I would be there. But I can see you tomorrow.
Hmm.
Great, that works. So he sent me a list of the houses he likes, and I was like, I don't think you're going to like any of these, but I'll show them to you. But I also want to show you this other new home community that's
Hmm.
in the area. So we looked at all these houses, didn't like them, went to the new home community, loved it, put an offer in, and I've sold them 3 other houses.
Wow.
So I just feel
Diligence.
like I just feel like if you put the effort in, like piece by piece, like it'll eventually come around. It might not be that weekend
Hmm.
or a year from now, but it definitely does. The hard work that you put in, and the universe will give you back what you put into it. So if I'm just going to be lazy and one day, like, oh, I'll just do this newsletter now, and see what happens, and
Right.
nothing happens, and it's like, I'm not going to do that anymore. Probably nothing will come from it. But
Hmm.
if you keep going, eventually something will come out of it. Maybe not like my stories, but you never know.
We can only hope, right? We can only hope that's what I've been. No, it's funny. when my wife and I were going to get married, and then COVID happened, we ended up having to push our wedding back a year, but we still got married at the courthouse on the same day. And our brokerage is in Midtown, so I had like 6 friends. They all came out. We were all outside doing the whole social distancing thing because we just wanted to like celebrate with somebody. Like, hey, we just got married, right? And
exactly.
And I'm not advocating that your life should work like completely around your business, but I did have somebody reach out to me literally on that day, as we were doing that event, and I ended up taking a call from them just because I was like, well, this is my job. I got to do it, right? And it ended up leading to a sale, and my wife was happy. She didn't care that I took the call, but it is kind of one of those things where if you continue to put that effort forward, I do think in anything, right, eventually the scales will turn in your favor.
Definitely.
So you're killing it in real estate. You're making what, probably over $100,000 after your second year if you're doing 36 sales. I mean, I don't know what the price point was around then, but
probably.
So you're doing good. You're living a good life. You don't have barely any bills apparently. And so how long from kind of doing that did you kind of make that decision that you're going to open? Well, you have I'm not sure in which order you opened your businesses. Could you have the property management company? Was that first?
Yeah, so I decided to get my broker's license, and I think I got it in 2013.
Okay.
So that was almost 10 years ago. And then I just kind of had that in my back pocket because it was my ultimate goal to be my own broker and have my own brokerage. And then I also opened a corporate broker license too with DRE. So you have to be a corporate broker also to like have your own brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really do anything with that for about a year. And then I kept getting clients asking me to manage properties for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I had referred people to a couple other property management companies, but they would never return their phone calls. And I'm like, I'm sorry. So I just stopped referring them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been managing my own rental properties since 2006. So I knew a few things about it. And I'm like, well, maybe this is another opportunity that I should look into. So I'm trying to think what year it was. I think it was 2016 is when I opened DK Property Management with another colleague, but it was my business, and then she worked under me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started DK Property Management together. And so it was kind of like a side hustle in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It was just basically our clients that we were helping out. And then we would just get referrals. So, I mean, we never really did any marketing. We have a Yelp account, but never really mailed anything
Sure.
or tried to obtain more clients. But at one point, we were managing over 100 properties. So
I've heard that the price point on property management can be pretty tough.
yes, I mean, it's not, you deal with a lot of problems. I mean, it's not a fun business. It's basically problem management, not
Mm-hmm.
property management. And you make the most money when you actually rent a property out. So it's like a lease up,
Mm-hmm.
but the monthly management is not like super lucrative unless you
Right.
have a lot of accounts. But
Yeah,
it's
because
not really something that I want to do full time just because it can get you sucked in.
right, because we have a rental property out in England, and it's not very expensive. It's I think it's like £150 a month, and
Oh, wow.
they manage it, and they will also carry any months that they don't have a renter in there.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, this is pretty
That's a
sweet.
great deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal. But I kept thinking like, that's not very much money for you guys. I don't know how many of these you have, but you probably have to have quite a bit for that to make sense, Because I mean,
Yeah.
that would be, if they had to carry 1 month, that would essentially be their entire year profit. So I don't know.
Yeah, and property management is a lot of accounting, reconciling accounts, trust accounts, um, and a lot of maintenance too.
Hmm.
And I have noticed a trend recently where I see on Facebook or Instagram where people are wanting to get their broker's license so they can do property management also. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh gosh, good luck to you.
Yeah, I've had the conversation. When you get into real estate, you're kind of like, well, what do I do with this license? Like, there's, what can I do? What's the whole world of real estate? And for a while, I was like, okay, like property management seems interesting. I worked for an HOA for a couple years. And so I was kind of like, maybe. And I talked to my broker and he's like, oh, those are really tight margins. Like, I don't know. He's like, that, it's not the most fine. And like you said, it's a lot of dealing with problems and things like that. And so, when I heard that you were doing it, I was like, well, props to you for finding a way to make that work.
Yeah, and I mean, it's in like a market like now, it's nice to have that too, because you're actually getting a steady income in
Hmm.
real estate because you will be getting, a monthly income
Hmm.
also. So that's the nice thing about property management is it's steady and you know
Hmm.
what you're going to make. As which is different than sales because
Sure.
right now I've seen a lot of sales falling out because people are not approved anymore or homes aren't selling listings that uh, agents have gotten that they can't sell
Hmm.
and sellers might not want to reduce the home 50,000 or 100,000 to get it sold in today's market.
Yeah, the market's shifting. Hopefully everybody who's listening to this knows that. Interest rates are up. Feds are going to meet another 3 times in the next 4 months, I think. So I would expect that rates are going to continue to go up and property prices are going to keep going down. So it'll be interesting to find people that will do a good job in making sure that you get the best deals that you can get and things like that. But so you start the property management, and when did you do at the same time did you open your brokerage for real estate, or was this later?
No, it was later. So I didn't open my brokerage until I think it was actually last year.
So you had your license with the Realty One that whole time.
So I had my license with Realty One, and then I had it at Prado Real Estate
Okay.
um, for I think it was 2019 to 2021.
Okay.
And the only reason why I I I was actually put in a position where I had to open my own brokerage because the broker passed away unexpectedly.
Oh no.
So it was either go back to Realty One, which I wasn't going to do because I didn't want to go back to, the 500 agent
Hmm.
brokerage. Or I just did a new DBA under my current corporate broker's
Hmm.
license, which I ended up doing.
And
And then
that's the
that's where Live Beautifully
Live
Real Estate
Beautifully
Group
real.
came
And do you
to
have anybody on
fruition.
your? I know I saw that you have
My husband
yeah, you have a, does he still have his license?
does, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that you have like a office manager, a maintenance manager. Do you have other realtors under you?
No.
Is that do you want to have more realtors under you, or you can kind of
Um,
care less on that component?
I don't want to babysit.
Maybe there's someone out there that's just like you though, right?
I
There's some
if
woman
there
out
was
there grinding
somebody,
right now.
yeah, if I mean, I'm not looking to recruit people,
Hmm.
but if I came across somebody who I thought was like very hardworking, dependable, did things properly, that wasn't going to be, that did their paperwork,
Yeah.
that I didn't have to constantly check on, then yeah, I would love to have them work with me.
Yeah,
But
that's the kind of like difficult part of, I think this is why a lot of people they go to pre-made or franchise brokerages already, right? Because the liability of carrying someone under you and them not doing their job correctly falls on the brokerage ultimately. And that could be scary. And it's not that the paperwork is that difficult, but it does seem like some people have a little bit of trouble making sure the right stuff is done with the right signatures and it's all put in to the back end systems in a timely manner. And so I could imagine with how much you have going on, you're not jumping to get, a bunch of people or get to babysit.
No. And again, like with the whole recruiting aspect, I've always been in the mentality where I'm going to make my own living. I don't want to depend on others to make, a portion off of them.
Sure. So how many listings do you have right now or buyers? I mean, the market's, like you said, the market's shifted. So what's your business kind of look like right now outside of your rentals and your property management?
So I have one that's in contract, thank goodness. And it's supposed to close next week. I have a house I just listed a few days ago. And then I have another listing coming up in like a week, but that one's in Oroville. So I'm a little nervous about that one. And then as far as buyers go, I have a few people on the fence, but part of it is, I think because people are pinched for money right now, like it has to be the perfect house, turnkey for somebody to really take a leap or the right price. And then, like I said earlier, I'm looking for another investment property to do vacation rentals because that's a great stream of income. So I've been actively looking, and I think right now, if you have the money, it's a great time to buy because you have more leverage with sellers.
So when, just to like jump back just a little bit, when Airbnb was like really popping off and getting super popular, like were you like, yes, thank God, like I have these properties, I'm really excited to put these up, like I'm gonna double down on this? Because I know that's gotten really, the laws, I know Tahoe specifically, but a lot of those rules have gotten really stringent with these short-term rentals. What was your initial kind of thought around it, and how are you feeling now?
So honestly, the property we purchased in Sonoma, I really loved, wine country. And I was like, oh, it'd be great to have a vacation rental. I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, oh, and this is a great deal that I found. I can't believe this house is still on the market. I have to buy it. So I bought it and, renovated it, and we rented it as an Airbnb for about a year and a half. That got a little bit difficult there because of the restrictions changing. And then also maintenance people down there were hard to come by, and cleaners too, being dependable and being so far away was like, this is getting too stressful, and having a baby too.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't deal with all this. But luckily, like the Sonoma and the Tahoe property, we bought those properties before I feel like Airbnb was kind of like the in thing to do. So we were right on the right behind when it started to become popular. And then also before Airbnb, I think, went public also. And I think that really drove Airbnb's business too, and VRBO or Verbo. But I've been doing a lot more research throughout California for the specific, cities or counties with their short-term rental ordinances. And a lot of these cities and counties, they've changed since 2020 because of COVID. And I think more people were going to Airbnbs to get out of their house. And it created a lot of problems for the cities and for the community. So that's why all these ordinances have gone into effect. And from doing a lot of research recently, like Tahoe is not strict compared to some of these other places, and some places won't even allow it at all.
Well, that's I personally don't know if I'll ever own any B&Bs, like rentals, fine, investment properties or whatever. But it's just like you said, I've always found that I'm like, man, it's already tough enough to just like have these properties, let alone make sure you're getting somebody there consistently to make sure things are clean. And then, I've had my friends and we've stayed in places, and I can't say that everybody that I've stayed with has taken the best care of these places. And then I just don't want that to happen to something I own,
Yeah.
So I definitely understand this. So what's the, we're getting towards the end of the podcast. What's, the future look like for you in the real estate market?
I mean, I've I've always loved the sales and resale market. So I'll always be doing that. But I think I will be doing more of the investor side too. And my goal for retirement is to own 10 rental properties.
Hmm.
So I'm
Did I
halfway
see that
there.
you just, you put your license in another state maybe?
No, so I actually opened a an LLC in Wyoming, and
Okay.
that's more like a privacy thing, so
Oh,
that to
sorry.
put properties in.
Yeah. But you're blowing your whole thing up.
It's all good.
All right, cool. Well, I think, for me, super cool story. I'm glad that you were able to find some time to come on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for asking
I
me.
only had small snippets of who you were from Craig, and it was just always that you're like super hardcore in real estate and you do really well. And, obviously that you guys are growing the business and things like that. And so, I love to be able to spend some time with people that I feel are as driven as I am and, have like minded conversations like that. So we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, as always, guys, this is the Hard Money Show where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. Thank you guys so much for being on. You guys have a great day.